Hello, hi.
Hello, Ajahn Brahmali. Hello.
Hello, hello. How is everyone?
Thank you for coming today.
Yes, no problem. Happy New Year to everyone.
We have here our Buddhist fellowship friends, and we also have Sister Eileen and Sis Jenny. So we're all very happy to see you.
Okay, marvelous. I'm happy to see you. Good.
Ajahn, so shall we start the session? Thank you very much. May I invite Ajahn to give us the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts?
Okay, Okay, no problems. We'll do that first of all, and then we'll take it from there. So, okay. Wow, okay, that's very, very handy. So let's start with the Namo Tassa as usual, and then I'll do things first, and you can do it afterwards.
Yes.
Namo
Thank you.
Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Ti Saranagamanang Nittitang.
Amma Bante.
Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinna Dana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Kame Sumichachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Kame Sumichachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Meraya Majja Pamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Miraya Maja Pamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Mani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Sugatingyati Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Nibbutingyanti Tasma Silang Visoda. Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Ajahn. And now, for all of you who are not familiar with Ajahn, and for all of you online also who are not familiar with Ajahn, may I read his bio to introduce him. Ajahn Brahmali was born in Norway in 1964 and first became interested in Buddhism and meditation in his early 20s. Having completed degrees in engineering and finance, he began his monastic training as an Angarika in England at Amaravati and Chithurst Buddhist Monastery. Ajahn Brahmali then traveled to Australia and has lived at Bodhiana Monastery since 1994, ordaining as a bhikkhu in 1996 with Ajahn Brahm as his preceptor. He has been instrumental in most of the building and maintenance projects at Bodhiana Monastery and at the emerging Hermit Hill property in Serpentine. Ajahn Brahmali's knowledge of the Pali language and of the suttas is excellent, and that's an understatement. He has been getting more and more popular over the years, traveling around Asia and Singapore, and making the teachings of the Buddha easily accessible to all. Ajahns' clear and thoughtful and inspiring talks make the teachings of the Buddha easily accessible to all. And as his teachings and sutta retreats in Australia were getting more and more popular, the word about him spread, and he has traveled to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka, and other places in the world to share his knowledge and experience. And today, we are very honored and very blessed to have him here, zoomed live from Perth to Singapore. Over to you, Ajahn.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so nice to be with you all again. And it's a shame I can't actually come to Singapore. I'd like to. I've not been invited, but it may take still some time before I can be there. But now that we have all this wonderful technology, maybe it doesn't matter all that much, and we can cut down a bit on the greenhouse gases and that sort of thing instead. So the title for the talk today is Seeing Opportunities in Difficulties. And this sounds almost like some kind of management course. You know, when you do management, there are problems in your company, or there are competitors or whatever, and there are things that you have to overcome. And a very common theme of management is the idea of finding opportunities when there are difficulties. But of course, in a management sense, these things are very, in a sense, superficial. There are things in our life, finding opportunities in the sphere of the work or management or whatever. But if it is about the spiritual life, if it is about the core things that life is really about, the meaning of life itself, then finding opportunities when there are difficulties is much more powerful, much more meaningful, and it goes to the very core of what we are as human beings. So it's a very, very meaningful thing here. And now we have, just finished the year 2020. It's like, just finished a New Year's celebration, whatever that was. I'm not sure what it was, and what it was much, but you know what it's like. So we just finished the year 2020, and many people are saying that 2020 was a difficult year. Yeah, it was a bad year. It was a, I don't know, what is it in Pali? No, I'm not sure what it is in Pali. Bad year, duvasa, something like that. It was a bad year. And everyone is having like a hope that 2021 is going to be better than 2020. Maybe we will now have some, bit less problems, and the world will go in a good direction. So is that a good way of thinking about things? Is it advisable to think of 2020 as a bad year? Is it advisable to have hope for 2021 that it will be a better year? Is that a good way of looking at the world? And I think the answer is that even though it is a very common way of looking at things, I think the answer is no, it is not a good way of looking at things. Because if you think of 2020 as a bad year, it means that you have an expectation that things will be different in other years. You have this idea that things will somehow, in the long run, be preferable or be better or be different. So instead of using 2020 as a learning experience, instead of using it as a kind of Dhamma seeing it in terms of the Buddhist teaching and trying to understand it from a Buddhist point of view, we're trying to kind of get rid of it, kind of eliminate 2020 as if it never happened, as if it was an aberration that shouldn't really be happening here. And now we can come back to 2021. We can all have a big sigh of relief. We can breathe in again and we can relax and we can enjoy normality here. But is 2021 going to be different? We don't know. Yeah, maybe it's going to be better. Maybe it's going to be roughly the same. Maybe it's going to be worse. We just have no idea. The idea of hoping that the next year is going to be better is actually quite dangerous, because the moment you start hoping for a better year, it means you also have some degree of attachment to the idea that next year is going to be better. And if you are attached to that idea and the world turns out to be pretty much the same or maybe worse, well, guess what? You're going to suffer as a consequence. That is just the nature of hoping for something, thinking it's going to be one way, when in fact it turns out that to be quite different. So there is in my opinion, it is not a wise way of thinking that 2020, finally, I'm so happy it's over. You can take a deep breath and having a hope for 2021 that's going to be different. It's not wise, because you are setting yourself up for suffering if you think in that way. We need an approach, a different way of looking at the world, a different way of thinking about things. And then there is a chance that we will reduce our suffering instead of increase it, by thinking more in line with how the Buddhist teachings work. And when we hope for the future, when we have ideas about the future should be like and how we would like it to be, then that is very similar to dreaming about the future. When you dream about the future, you're kind of hoping, maybe it will be like this, maybe it will be like that. And so much of our life is really about this sense of dreaming about the future, having ideas about what the future is going to be like. And hoping for 2021 is no different. That's also a dream about the future. And very often we dream not just about maybe next year, but about what things are going to be like in 10 years' time, or what it's going to be like down the line. And we have all these fantasies about things. And one of the things that you will always find about those dreams is that they are unrealistic. They're not the way the world actually is. Dreams, they kind of, you cut out, you manipulate the future in such a way just to see the nice things, just to see the positive things. And that is the problem with dreaming. It is an unrealistic expectation. And what is interesting is that the Buddha himself, he used the idea of a dream to talk about how we are unrealistic about the future. He said that the world, the way we think about the world, especially the sensory realm, the realm of the five senses, is like a dream. You dream about it, you have ideas about it, and then when you get there, it turns out just to be ordinary. It turns out to be pretty much the way things are now. All of those things that they evaporate. And this is how the Buddha talks about the sensory pleasures world. And when he talks about the sensory pleasures, what he actually means is the world of the five senses. I think this is one of those common misunderstandings in Buddhism. We talk about sense pleasures. What we actually mean is the world of the five senses. At the world of five senses, we dream about it, but the reality is actually very different from how we dream. And that is where we have to be so careful. And I would recommend you to think about this, because actually it is very obvious when you start to think about it. You think about the times that you have dreamt about things, ideas, things that you wanted. And it can be anything that you want in your life. It can be wanting a new car. You have this dream about the new car. And then you get the car maybe down the track after working really hard, taking up a loan to get the car. I don't know what you would do, all of these things. And eventually you're able to buy that new car. And then you realize that once you get the car, quite soon afterwards, it is not quite the same as the dream. In the dream, there's usually only upsides. There's only positive outcomes in the dream. Yeah, or you have a beautiful new car, you drive around Singapore, maybe you take it even into Malaysia, you can drive around, you can see more as you have a car of your own. Some of those parts of the dream will obviously be true, but then there will be downsides. Yeah, the downsides is that you are worried about your car. You get attached to it. You're looking for scratches in the paintwork. Yeah, oh, somebody has scratched the paintwork. That's terrible. These bad people, they're not being careful enough. Or if you take it maybe to Malaysia, or maybe Singapore is quite safe, but you take your car somewhere else, maybe someone steals the car. Yeah, this is my car. Cannot steal my car. This is my car. And you grieve and you lament because the car is stolen. And all of these attachments, all of these things of this becomes ours. This is the downside of owning the car. And it leads to endless suffering. And it leads to endless suffering, for the most part, because we take it to be mine. So the dream and the reality are not the same. The dream is always much more beautiful. The reality has all of these negative consequences to it that we always tend to forget. Yeah, and the same thing is true of everything in that world of the five senses. It is true of our relationships. You know what it's like when you dream about a relationship. We think, oh, it would be so marvelous to be with this person. Yeah, this person is so wonderful and so nice, and everything about them is just so great. And when you are in love with someone, when you are really kind of over the moon, you have no idea about the reality of that person. You're only one aspect of them. And of course, the reality of relationships actually is quite different from what it seems like. And I sometimes it's quite obviously, as a monk, you want to reflect on this. You want to reflect on the downsides of relationships, because otherwise you might have a problem. Yeah, that's one of the things we do as monastics. And one of the things that I do to kind of drive home this point is to look at my own family. Yeah, your family, they're very close to you. And I don't want to say anything bad about my own family, of course, but when I look at the relationship, I look at the relationship between my mother and father before my father died and passed away. And I thought to myself, do I want to have the same kind of relationship that my mother and father had? Not so sure if I want to have exactly the same kind of relationship as my parents had. Why? Because, well, in reality, my parents were very good people. And they lived good lives, and they looked after each other, and they cared for each other, and they were, there was many, as far as couples go, I don't think it gets much better than that. They didn't argue very much and all of that. But still, when I looked at the relationship, it wasn't all that much to it. Yeah, it was kind of, after a while, you take each other for granted. You kind of live together. Sometimes you have this, the small negativities of ordinary life. And I thought to myself, I don't really want to live that kind of relationship. Or I looked at my brother and sister and looked at the kind of relationships they have or had. Yeah. And again, would I want that kind of relationship? And the answer is no, probably not. I'm probably not really interested in that. And of course, not all the time we think that we are going to do better. Yeah, and I'm probably exactly the same. I can do better. I think you realize after a while that your family, they are the people who you have a very, there's so many similarities between family members. You have a similar genetic makeup, you have a similar way of thinking, your psychology is going to be similar. Most likely you end up with a very similar kind of relationships as well as what your family members have. And maybe worse kind of relationship. You just have no idea. It is just so incredibly uncertain. But I think your family is a good guidance for what is going to happen. And as a monk, I find it very, very useful to reflect on that because the rose-tinted glasses, when you are young, you fall in love with somebody. Everything looks so marvelous, but the reality is so different. It is so much more mundane. It is so boring. It is so gray. There's nothing much to it. and hopefully falls apart as a consequence. So the dream and the reality are so different. And this is so problematic in our life. Or, you know, you can expand this almost limitlessly to all the things that, you know, you may feel matters in your life. It can be your job. It can be the dream of a perfect job, about, you know, getting educated, having a good education and using that in the workplace, or having the right place to live, or having the, you know, the right kind of game console. Yeah. Like whatever it is. All of these kind of things. Yeah. The dream is one thing. And the reality is often so mundane, so ordinary, so nothing. Look at the people around you. Look at the people in the world right now. And that will give you an idea of what these things really are like. And are the people in the world, are they happy? Those who are ahead of you, those who have those jobs, those who have those kind of relationships, are they really full, satisfied and happy? And the answer is, of course, no, they're pretty much like you. We're all pretty much the same in that sense. Yeah, there isn't anyone. Nobody has really achieved those dreams that they would like to achieve, because those dreams are always unrealistic. And this is the same thing right now about the new year, about the future. As soon as you realize this, it's actually just a dream about the future. It's an idea about what things will be like. And it is always unrealistic, that kind of dream. So how should we think about next year then? If the dream is unrealistic, what is a realistic way of thinking about the future? And this is kind of interesting, yeah? So how should we think about the future? What kind of a way of viewing the future that actually works? And I think the answer, the best way of thinking about the future is actually to think about the past. And the reason why this works is because we tend to, the history tends to kind of repeat itself. Yeah? The way the world is tends to be the same over long periods of time. There was an interesting book, I think, by one of these kind of intellectual people that was written some time ago, and I happened to just to read, I didn't actually read the book, but I read about it. And it was this idea that if you are going to project, or you're going to decide what are the buildings, yeah, the buildings in our city, take a city like, you know, London, that's been around for over 2,000 years. Yeah? What are the buildings in London that are going to be there in 100 years, or in 1,000 years? What are the buildings that are most likely to still be there? And you might think, well, the buildings most likely to be there are probably maybe the new buildings, yeah? Because the new buildings, they have been up recently, so they will last a longer time. Yeah, so maybe that is the right way of thinking. Or maybe the large buildings, because the large buildings, they have a lot of mass. So because they have a lot of mass, they will kind of carry on into the future. But no, he said the buildings that are most likely to last, to still be there in 100 years or 1,000 years are actually the oldest buildings. They are the ones that are most likely, because they have proven their durability already. Yeah. So his argument was that 50 years that something gets older, you can expect it to live another 50 years into the future. So older things are more likely to live into the future. And it's this nice idea of thinking about our society. And I think it is very similar also in the way that if you want to look at the future in general, if you want to understand the future of our society, look into the past. That is where you can find the future. So what are some of the trends in our society that have always been there, always been underlying things? And some of those trends that have always been underlying things are not very happy trends. You can say, okay, you can say there are certain maybe happy trends that society has tended towards more material well-being, that technology has been getting better. So maybe that will continue because it's already there. But there are other trends in human society that have been going on for thousands and thousands of years that are not so happy. What are those trends? Well, there are things like pandemics. Yeah, we know that now. Pandemics, we're kind of experiencing it. We know what that is all about. Yeah, that is a trend that will also continue in the future. Or you look at Other things in world history like famines, yeah, not enough food for people. This is a trend that you've been seeing in human history for thousands of years. It's also going to carry on very likely into the future. Or trends like wars, yeah, really scary things like wars. Human history is full of wars. There's wars, again, going back as far as you can possibly know. And if you look at human society again today, and you look at the same underlying tendencies are there, we should also be expecting these things in the future. So instead of dreaming about the future, we should ask ourselves a realistic question. What is our society like? What is it like in the past? Are these things going to carry on into the future? And very likely they are. And the reason, from a Buddhist point of view, why the same things will tend to carry on in the future is because the underlying things that drive these things, yeah, in Buddhism, we would say the underlying things that drive things like, especially things like war, well, it is the human greed, human anger, and human delusion. These are the things that drives these things also, because they're still there. They have driven them in the past. Because we will never eliminate these things, because as soon as you eliminate them, you are enlightened and you're no longer around. So they will always be there in human society. It means that these things will always be there. They are part and parcel of our human society. They are underlying tendencies that are always there. And so you can be absolutely sure that they will also be there in the future. And it's kind of uncomfortable, isn't it, if you think about it like that? Because we so much like to believe in the idea of progress, yet we can somehow get out of these things, somehow some kind of utopian society here. And of course, humankind, we have been masters at trying to develop utopian political systems, yeah, like Marxism kind of utopia. Capitalism is another kind of utopian system if you take it to the extreme. And we have tried this, for a long period of time, and we have found it doesn't work. Yeah, utopias don't work. And the reason why they don't work is because the underlying tendencies in the human mind are the same. That's my view of the issue anyway, because the underlying problems are always going to be there. And for that reason, it is impossible for utopia to work. It will always be defeated by the tendencies in the human mind to destroy these things, to take advantage of them, to always be aggressive, always be greedy. And then, for that reason, there is no final stability, final certainty in these things. So that is how I like to think about the future. And maybe you think it is very bleak. Maybe you think that I'm being very pessimistic. Maybe you think I'm being too much of a Buddhist monk and I need to chill a little bit and I need to relax a little, not take things so seriously. And of course, we shouldn't take things too seriously. We should be relaxed, we should have a good time, and we should joke, and we should do all of these kind of things, of course. But I think it is also at the same time useful to be realistic about things, because if we are not realistic, it's impossible to make good choices. How can you make a good choice if you're not realistic about the world? In fact, you will make bad choices. And those bad choices that you make, they will lead you down the track to suffer and have problems and all kinds of things. But if you can make good choices in your life, it means that you will be able to live with those problems in a wiser way, and actually you'll be more happy as a consequence. Choices built on being realistic are far better than the choices that are built on being unrealistic. So we need to look at the nature of things, the nature of our society by looking into history here. And this is one of the beautiful things that Ajahn Chah, I'm sure you all know Ajahn Chah, the very famous monk in Thailand, who was Ajahn Brahm's teacher. And one of the beautiful things that he said, which I think is something that we can also bring into our lives, is the idea of learning from nature. Yes, say that we look into the past to learn about the future, then we are learning from nature. You can take further the idea of learning from nature. So for example, one of the things that he would say, because they lived in rural Thailand. There was, some forest around and things were very simple. So learning from nature really meant to learn immediately from the nature around you. And one of the things that you see when you look at nature around you, and in one sense, it's perhaps easy to do that here in Perth because we live very close to nature. There are also trees and animals around. And one of the obvious things that you see here when you look at nature carefully is how things are always changing, always moving around. How you look at the trees around you, one tree sprouts up one year and it grows up and grows up and grows up. And then there's another tree which gradually dies and eventually dies completely. And you see this change of your environment, always shifting, always moving around, always becoming different. You easily see this impermanence in the world around you. And this is a very obvious when you look at the nature around you. And you see that, when you see that things are changing like that, you realize gradually that there's nothing really there to hold on to. This idea of the changing nature, the idea of nature changing around you all the time, when you see that happening, you can see that there's nothing there really to hold on to. Rocks are moving slowly, the world is moving, the nature, everything is kind of slowly changing into something else. You look at your little kuti, little huts that we live in the forest over here, and slowly over the years, you see that they deteriorate very, very slowly. You see the bricks cracking a little bit. You see the color of the paint gradually fading a little bit and becoming more dirty. And you can see the process of impermanence taking over. And you realize that there's nothing there to hold on to. Everything in the world that we hold on to, everything that we delight in, everything that we think will be there must gradually change. And there is really nothing to grasp onto in that world. And that is when you observe that and you observe it carefully, and it doesn't really matter whether it's in the city or in the forest. When you see that, it becomes kind of concerning because you realize that so much of the world around us, when you live in Singapore, the city around you, when you live in Perth, you live in the monastery, the nature around you, we actually hold on to these things to some extent. This is our familiar playground, where we like to, where we have an idea of familiarity. This is our city, this is how it works. But when you realize it is also unreliable, uncertain, then you cannot really grasp onto that. You realize actually it is sort of off-putting, and you don't really want to attach so much to that anymore because it is kind of scary when you understand how unreliable it actually is. So you learn from nature about the idea of impermanence, and it makes the world, the external world, sort of less interesting, less exciting, less worthy of attaching to, because if you attach to it, you're just asking for suffering down the line. This is like big picture impermanence, and the problem of that world. But there's much more to learn from nature. One thing is just seeing impermanence, which I think already is very useful. But another thing that you see very quickly when you watch nature, especially when you watch the animals around you, is the amount of violence, the amount of conflict that exists in nature. And it's strange, very often when you live outside of Australia, maybe when you live in Singapore or you come from Europe, where, like me, you think, oh yeah, Australia has all cute animals, the koala bears and the kangaroos and all of this kind of stuff. Oh, they're so cute, but that's only from a distance that they are cute. When you know these animals up close, they're not all that cute at all. You realize that actually these animals are, furry and nice on the surface. Underneath that, there's a lot of aggression and violence and things going on. And you see, the small joeys fighting with their mother, they're fighting over the food, or you see the males and the females fighting over a mating partner, and all of these things, and everything in that world, anything there that is desired by these animals, they have to fight for almost everything, yeah? Even if it is just the grass on the ground, they sometimes fight for it. Let alone if you give them some food from your bowl, they go crazy. They really, really fight over it. They go completely nuts when they see human food, you know? They get a piece of chocolate cake and they feel, wow, chocolate cake, gee. And you realize they probably were humans in the past life because they really love chocolate cake, just like most human beings do, which is fascinating here. And so they get very, very, very greedy. In fact, sometimes they get so greedy that they, you know, they overcome the fear of human beings. And just to one, this is a story that I've told before, which is kind of cute story, and it shows you how tame the kangaroos can become when they get close to human beings. And this was a story many years ago. I was sitting on my walking path, at the monastery here, and I was eating my my kind of daily meal on the walking path. And as I was happy eating away, there was a kangaroo. It came in on the other end of the walking path. The kangaroo comes in, and I could see the kangaroo was looking at me. Well, what is this monk doing over there? Yeah, whatever. What is this, you know, being doing over there? And you can see it sniffing. Yeah, the kangaroo sniffing the air. And it realized I was eating something, yeah? So gradually it comes closer and closer and closer, on this walking path, until it comes all the way up against me here, yeah? I mean, it's like literally all the way up against me here. And then it looks into my bowl, yeah? And that's when I get a bit worried, because as I'm looking into my bowl, you know that at this point it's going to be very greedy here. And as it is looking into my bowl, it starts lowering its head towards the bowl. I'm sitting there. Yeah, the kangaroo is just next to me. This is like a wild kangaroo. Well, supposedly wild anyway, but this one doesn't seem very wild. So I take my hands and I quickly cover my bowl. I'm very happy to share food with the kangaroos, right? I really, it's actually a nice thing to do, to be able to share your food with other beings, but I'm not willing to allow the kangaroo to eat directly out of my bowl. That's going one step too far, yeah? I may be soft. I try to be a soft monk, but I'm not that soft yet, because I don't know, maybe I'm concerned about kangaroo illnesses or something like that. So I put my hands on very quickly so that the kangaroo cannot stick its head into my bowl. And then the kangaroo takes its little paws, the front legs, yeah, puts it on my arms, yeah, puts it down and try to pull my arms apart while sticking its head in between into my bowl. And I've never, ever had any experience like that before with a wild animal. It was really amazing. We were sitting next to each other. This wild animal is really being very, very super familiar with me. So at this point, I sort of decide, okay, enough. So I get up from my seat and I have to literally push this kangaroo, push it off. And very unwillingly, this kangaroo, eventually it disappears and jumps away. But this shows you, the power of greed. Because this kangaroo, normally they are afraid of human beings, but greed is so powerful that it will make you do almost anything. It will even make you come all the way up against a human being like that, which normally is very frightening for a kangaroo. So this is then what drives the violence in the human world. This craving, the desire, how we all desire the same thing. And you can see it so obviously in the world of animals. It is there all the time. So you learn from nature. You can see how bad it is. And so this is some of the ideas of learning from that world. Learning how powerful craving is, how it almost must lead to some degree of rivalry and violence and these kind of things. And this is actually one of the similes used by the Buddha himself to explain the danger in the sensual world, the sensory world. And what the Buddha says, and this is one of my kind of beautiful little similes, what the Buddha says, is like a bird. A bird, when the bird gets hold of a piece of meat, the bird is very happy because pieces of meat are very hard to come by and get hold of in the animal realm. Pieces of meat are very rare. The bird, very happy, takes the piece of meat in its little claws and then flies off with that piece of meat. But the problem is that there are other birds, large birds, and they see that bird with a piece of meat because birds being birds, that's what they do. And then they fly after that other bird, and they try to rip that piece of meat out of its claws. Yeah, they're trying to kind of get hold of it because this is what the animal is like. And if that first bird doesn't let go of that piece of meat in the air, what's going to happen to it? Well, probably it will have to fight for its life, yeah, because this is a very valuable piece of meat. So either it will die or it will at least be very injured if it doesn't let go of it. And it's such a beautiful simile because the piece of meat very nicely symbolizes the sensory world. Yeah, it's kind of the thing, the things that we are after in the sensory world. It symbolized that very nicely, and it symbolized the idea that we always fight over the things in the sensory world. There's no such thing as fighting in that world. We're always trying to get hold of the same things. We're trying to have the same partners. We are fighting for the same promotion. We are fighting to get the same apartments. We are fighting to have the same toy or to maybe to have that piece of cake or whatever it is. Yeah, and there's so much rivalry in our world, and there's so much because there's so much rivalry. There is a lot of a potential for violence and for all kinds of bad things as a consequence of that. So the Buddha is saying in the sensory world, because of all these external things, and because the pie is only so large, because there's only so much to go around, it means there's only so much to share out. And because there's only so much to share out, it means that we will fight over the spoils. We will fight over what is there. And we're not going to be happy just to take our share. But there's always going to be a sense of rivalry, a sense of fighting over things in that world of the five senses. And that is such a fascinating insight, yeah, that the world of the five senses, it is inherent in that world that there will be rivalry, that there will be competition, that there ultimately will be even violence and problems, and we are going to try to kind of get things from each other. That is the nature of that world. And it is so kind of off-putting, yeah, it kind of really turns you off, that whole world of the five senses. And if you think about the world at large, you think about the world of even of nations, the world of tribes or whatever it is, we often fight over the resources in that world. And the fighting over those resources or fighting over land, fighting over whatever it is just really an extension, an expansion of the idea of fighting between people. Now fighting moves out and beyond that to whole nations, because our inner defilements, they get kind of magnified through nations, magnified through these other larger social structures that we construct as human beings. So this is is inherent in that world, that there will be fighting. And that is why, again, as I mentioned before, there have been wars in the past. There will be wars in the future. There have been infidelity between partners in the past. There will be more infidelity in the future. There have been a rivalry to move ahead, to do whatever, to find favor or whatever in the past. There will be more of the same in the future. As long as we live in the sensory world, and as long as the sensory world is important to us, as long as we attach to those things, there will also be the problems associated with that. It's impossible to avoid that. It is part and parcel of the same thing, the same basic structure of the world. So what is the alternative? And the alternative in this case, of course, is what we are talking about here. The alternative to the worldly life is always the spiritual path. Yeah, so when we practice the spiritual path instead, what we are looking for is the other inner values, the inner development of good values in our life and good qualities in ourselves. And of course, when we develop the inner values, it can never lead to that same rivalry. It can never lead to the conflict that we see in society. It cannot lead to conflict because it's inside of us. It is only the external things that can lead to conflict and rivalry, not the inner things that we develop. And so what that means is that when we practice the spiritual path, when we do it rightly and we just focus on our own inner qualities, it will never lead to those problems that the sensory world always must lead to. In fact, it leads to exactly the opposite thing. Why? Because when we develop those inner qualities, part of that development is actually the development of kindness. And if we take that inner development out into society, when we deal with others, which of course we have to, actually what we are doing is that we are not only avoiding conflict, but we are bringing harmony to the society around us at the same time. This is the beauty of the spiritual path, and this is why the spiritual path is so opposite, diametrically opposite to how the sensory world actually works. Instead of being caught in rivalry and conflict all the time, actually we're heading in exactly the opposite direction. So it's really powerful and really beautiful. And this is one of the reasons why the spiritual path is so different, such a different way of looking at the world, and why it is so useful. So again, this is the way to think about the future, learning from nature. What is the world like now? What are the problems that we have? And then seeing that these things will always be there, because the root causes, the root problems of these things are still the same. They are still there. Things haven't really changed. Yeah, and this is so. This is what we can expect in this world. And as I mentioned before, I was talking a little bit about, sometimes when we learn from nature, one of the things that we can learn from are also people that are close to us. I mentioned the idea of when, as a monk, to look at my siblings and see what their lives are like. They live, more ordinary lives, and what is their life like? And would I like to live in a relationship as they have? And the answer is not really, to be perfectly honest, because you can see the downside, and I don't really have any great delusion that I would be able to create a better relationship. I really don't think so. So for that reason, it all seems a little bit kind of off-putting and uninteresting. But one of the things that was very interesting to me, and this was one of the powerful moments in my life with my family. This was with my sister. My sister passed away just over a year ago now, and it was very, very interesting for me to see that happening, because when it is a family member who is close to you who passes away, it actually leaves quite a big impact on your mind. It leaves a big impact for a number of reasons. First of all, of course, whatever attachment there is there, or whatever value you see in that person, whatever endearment there is between you, that will make it more powerful. But it's also powerful because you know the person so well, and because you know the person so well, you can more understand the struggle, you can understand the underlying issues, you can understand what is going on. So you can see clearly, the problem of dying when it's someone close to you. And with my sister, it was a very good day for me, because my sister was in many ways a very kind of worldly person. She was full of very energetic, always doing things and getting things done. And always, and she was kind of building up this farm that she had been building up for many years, putting almost so much work, so many hours of work into this farm. And she was kind of determined to make it a great success, this farm that she was building up. And she had this large, beautiful house in the countryside where this farm was. And then she had two children. The children were both in their teens. My sister eventually died, late teens. And so she was doing all of these things, and her life revolved around this. This was what her life was about. She didn't really have much of a spiritual life. It was about doing things in the world, building things up, creating something, bringing up her children, all of this. That was what her life was like. And it was very fascinating to see what happens to a person like that when they get cancer. And she got cancer, and then over a couple of years, her body gradually deteriorated until eventually she died. And until the very last moment, with her very last energy, with everything she could do, she continued working on this farm, doing those things that she had always been doing. But then when I saw her, I didn't actually really see her, but when I spoke to her when I saw her the last time, a few months before she passed away, and when I heard about her dying in hospital, and I saw how she was striving to do the same kind of things over time, again and again and again, I felt this sense of futility. Yeah, the sense of, here is someone who has spent all their time doing things that belong to this world, building up this farm, yeah, doing these things, trying to create something, bringing up her children, trying to kind of make a good life for her children or whatever. Everything she was doing belongs to this world. And now she is about to die. She can't take any of that with her. And there was this powerful sense of futility, a sense of, what has she been doing? Has she really been spending her life well? Has she been doing something that she can actually take with her into the future? And that was such a powerful moment to remind me that when you are on your deathbed, when you are dying, you want to ensure that you have invested in something that you can bring with you into the future. Otherwise, each one of these sense of futility on our deathbed. Everything I have been doing, I have to give up. Yeah, I've been building all of these things up. Nothing that I can take with me into the future. And you feel the sense of despair on your deathbed. And that was so powerful because I knew my sister well, obviously. I knew her inclinations. I knew what kind of person she was, all of these kind of things. I could feel very powerfully the sense of now, you know, of a life maybe spent in the way that you ideally would if you were a more spiritual kind of person. So learn from nature, yeah, like Ajahn Chah said, learn from the things around you, look at the world, and look carefully. Don't just take things for granted, but look behind the surface to see what is going on. And what you will see is some of these things that I've been talking about. And perhaps you will be seeing even more as you do that, because these things are always there to be seen if you are open to it, if you have a kind of a Buddhist perspective that kind of guides you in the right way to understand the reality of these things. And again, when we see the reality, then we can make good choices. Yeah? And this is, of course, what this is really all about, being able to make different choices, understanding life in the right way, so that we can actually find new opportunities, opportunities that align with the world in the right way. And we use the difficulties as a fuel to make better choices in our existence. And what you find is that when you think about life in this way, yeah, one of the number of things that happen, one of the things that happens is that you become more compassionate towards the world, because you understand that all of us go through these problems all the time. Yeah, these problems are always there in the background. They just often just wait to come out. And we all have these problems in life. And when you, next time you see somebody maybe doing something silly or doing something stupid, you see someone who looks unhappy or miserable or something is wrong with them or whatever it is, next time you have more compassion, because you will understand that the underlying problems are always there and they surface for us at different times, and you can never really know what someone else is going through. So we have more compassion for the world around us, understanding how we're all trapped in the same kind of problems. And then this becomes a very, very beautiful way of developing your mind. This is kind of one of the first things that happens when you start to understand the idea of suffering here. But more importantly, what happens, and you have seen that maybe now also during the pandemic, yeah, that how wise people, they often become more compassionate when they see the world suffering as it has done through the COVID pandemic. But it's not just that we become more compassionate, it's also means that we tend to become more spiritual in a deeper sense of the word. Yeah, we start to become less, we start to understand the limits of the world around us. Instead of dreaming about 2021 as somehow different from 2020, 2021 being the hope for the future. Now things are finally going to be different. If you realize that 2021, maybe it will just be the same. Maybe it will be worse. Anything can happen in 2021. We have no idea what's going to happen in 2021. And when you take away that sense of dream about the future being past, then the future actually becomes less interesting. Yeah, you realize it is so uncertain. It is so unreliable. We don't know what's going to happen. If I attach to this, if I attach to something which is so unreliable, I'm really just asking for suffering here. Do you want to ask for suffering? And the answer is, of course not. You have to be crazy to ask for suffering. Please, suffering, come. No, of course we can't do that. That doesn't make any sense at all. So instead of doing that, you start to withdraw a little bit. You start to realize that the promises of the external world, they are often empty here. There's nothing there to really be promised. And you start to turn in a different direction. You start to turn to a place where it actually is possible to create happiness, to create a real future, to reduce suffering. And that is within each one of us. And the reason is because our inner life, we have a degree of power. We have a degree of ability to make a difference. We can choose whether we want to be kind, whether we want to be caring, whether we want to be compassionate, whether we want to be more understanding. That is a choice we can make moment after moment. Yeah. But what we cannot control is the world outside. And that is why the world outside always will let us down, because the world outside is subject to forces that are way beyond our control. The large forces of the world, the large forces of history, of humanity, of defilements, of all of these kind of things. And this is wisdom, yeah? Make a difference where you can make a difference. Don't try to control what ultimately is uncontrollable. This is the message. This is the learning experience from seeing the problems in the world. So when we look back on 2020, now that we are coming into 2021, what we should do, we should learn from 2020. 2020 may have been a very difficult year. There has been pandemics. There has been so much political instability. The large powers of the world seem to be facing off much more than they did before. There is a climate problem becoming larger and larger in the world. That has been 2020 for you. In many ways, you can see why people call it a difficult year. But learn from that. This is not an aberration. Yeah, this is actually part and parcel of reality. And once you understand that, instead of saying 2020 was bad, instead you think of this as reality, then your inner interest, where you look for purpose and meaning in life, the values that you have, they start to change. They take different, and you look for things in a different way. You look inside instead. And of course, that does not mean, I think it's important to point this out, this does not necessarily mean that you make a drastic change to your life or anything like that. What it means is that how you approach your life, how you live, how you deal with the ordinary things in the world, how you deal with work, with your colleagues, with family, and all of these kind of things. It is the how of life that changes, not necessarily the what of life. You may be doing the same things, but you do the same things with a new attitude, an attitude of developing your mind, developing your heart instead. You put more kindness, more compassion, more care, more peace, more understanding, more love into the things you do. And as you do that, that is where the difference is made. And that is how you change. So that is how we should think about life. And when we think about life in that way, we realize that the outcomes in the world, actually, they don't matter so much. Yeah, if 2021 becomes a better year, good. If it becomes the same, okay, fine, I can deal with it. If it becomes a worse year than 2020, okay, it is bad, but I can deal with that too. And the reason you're able to deal with it is because you are focusing on developing the inner qualities instead. You're focusing on developing those qualities that actually are controllable to a certain extent. And of course, what it means is that the happiness in life that comes from developing those inner qualities is in any case a far greater kind of happiness than any kind of happiness you can find outside. So you're doing it right anyway, whether the world is going better or bad. The real happiness, real contentment, all of the things that really matter, that are found on the inside rather on the outside. So regardless of what happens, you are doing the right thing here, and you're thinking about things in the right way here. So there's one more thing that I should just bring up very briefly in this, and this is how to use this also in your meditation practice. If we realize that the outcomes in the world are so uncertain, if we realize that our power and ability to influence outcomes in the world are very limited, the more you understand that, the less interest you have in that particular future. Yeah, if you realize that you may be able to create the future, but maybe you're not. If you realize that maybe you will solve the problems, but maybe you will not. You realize that all of these things are very uncertain and unreliable. It means that you have less interest in that world. Yeah. And it means that one of the things that I sometimes do in my meditation, because one of the problems is often can be thinking about future, thinking about solving problems, is to remind myself that actually maybe I don't have a future. Maybe the future that I imagine is actually very, very different from what I think it is. Yeah, the reality and imagination are often so far apart. So often I like to sit in meditation and just remind myself, I have no future. I have no future. Why? Because that future in the world is anyway, it's kind of irrelevant. I can't control it. I don't know what it's going to be like. And because it is so uncertain, because it cannot really be controlled, it is almost as if that future doesn't exist. It cannot really be pinned down. So what's the point in trying to control and create a future so uncertain and so unreliable? Instead, let me focus on the present moment. Let me let go of all that. And by thinking this idea, I have no future, actually, it helps me to let go of all of those things that often obsess the mind and think about, which can make the meditation so busy and full of thinking. And this is part of the a very simple but very beautiful way of reminding yourself to just let go of those things in the world that are not really useful and not really all that important. So that is what happens when we think about the world in the right way, and when we think about this new year in the right way. We don't hope for things that are beyond our control. We don't try to think of the world as as a place that should be in a certain way. And we realize that whether the world is going to be a happy place or a good place does not depend on our manipulation of the world. The people who have a happy future are the people who have good hearts. If you have a good heart, then you are creating a happy future for yourself and also for the people around you. That is how you create a happy future. You do not create a happy future by trying to manipulate the world. Why? Because it is simply too uncertain. It cannot be done that way. So if you want happiness in the future, if you want to create the world in the right way, then the happy world belongs to those people who have a good heart. And that is what I think, if you want to have a New Year's resolution, if you want to kind of do the right thing, then try to lean towards more spiritual kind of lifestyle in 2021, where you focus more on the mind, you focus more on how you live your life rather than what you get out of life. And if you do that, then you are living the right way. Then you make the opportunities. You are using the difficulties of life right now and the difficulties of 2021 to see the opportunities for 2021. You're looking in the right place, and you will be a blessing for yourself and also for all the people around you. So that is my talk for today. So there you are here.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think that was really inspiring for us. Can we say sadhu 3 times? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Ajahn. May I invite Ajahn to answer some questions, please? Do we have any questions from the people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah. Ajahn Brahmali, sorry. I can't resist but to, even though the world is uncertain, wish you a happy new year, monastic, a happy new year, and people who matter to you a happy new year, and all the whole world a happy new year and many years to come. That's my wish to you. So my question is, I have two questions if I may. The first question is that you talk about dreams, and you talk of dreams being the only, mainly the pleasant side of dreams. I mean, we get only the pleasant aspect of dream and very little. Whereas the reality is always the negative part of it. So explain to us why this is the case. Why can't the dream and the reality be the same, or the other way around? But why is it always positive but negative on the reality? So that's my first question.
Okay. So why is it the case? The reason it is the case is because of craving. And craving actually drives our thinking process. Craving makes us see reality in accordance with its own desires. Craving is a distorter of reality. And the craving gives you a vested interest, in the world. That vested interest, all that will distort what you see there, and distort it in such a way that you will tend to see only the good things. Yeah, so we come into this world with craving, and that craving distort things, and then because we distort things, we crave even more because we think it is better than it is. And that is really the root problem. So it is that delusion which comes with craving that forces us to see the world in the wrong way. So whereas if you ask someone who is an arahant, someone who is fully enlightened, they will be much more realistic, and if you ask an arahant, oh yeah, someone died, how do you feel? And they will say, oh yeah, someone, what you can expect, And they will say, oh, the Third World War is about to start. What do you think? Oh yeah, you can expect the Third World War, Oh, whatever it is, they will be so attuned with the idea of impermanence that nothing can really surprise the arahant, the fully enlightened being. And the reason is because they have let go of craving. They have they have lost that vested interest and distortion about reality.
Thank you. Okay, my second question is a bit long. You mentioned about your sisters being always concentrating on the five senses and only focus her energy on the five senses, whereas you think that this is all in futility. But she can also look at you as focusing on spirituality and what have you done? What have you contributed towards this world? Nothing. How you look at you. So you've got two different frame of mind. You're one frame of mind looking at the spiritual aspect and think there's a lot of things there, and he looking at the mundane or the five senses and think that he has done a lot, he has contributed a lot, left a lot for the children. And what have you left for your children or for your siblings or whatever? So you got two frame of mind, one looking at each other and say, what have you done? And you say, what can you bring? It isn't all a futility. Would you like to comment on this aspect of the two opposing?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Oh, I'll be very happy to comment on that. Very happy to comment on that one. So the thing is not so much that, I'm not saying that she hasn't done anything good. She has done good things, and as you say, she has brought up her children and she has added value to the world. And of course, these things matter. That's not my point. My point is not so much that she has not added some value. She has definitely added value. My point is more like when you come to the end of your life, when you come to the very end, you're about to die or whatever, then all of those things that you have built up, because remember, she would have been attached to this. If you have built an arm and you have made a beautiful house for yourself and you have built up a nice little family, and her family was very nice, the children were very good children, and everything is really positive. But that is what her life is about. That is what she is attached to her. And then when you are about to die, about to pass away, it is very hard, because everything you have spent your time doing, you have to let go of. This is your entire life. Sure, it's not bad what you have done, but you are, everything you have done, everything that matters to you, everything you are attached to, now it has to go. And you wonder, I have to leave it all behind. And she worked on these things till the very last moment, almost till her last breath. She was one of these very strong, will-powered people who could work regardless of how sick she was. And she almost worked till her last breath, and she died, something like that. And it is very hard to die when you are attached to so many things in the world, and that means so much to you. Yeah, it is very hard because everything that means something to you has to go. And so what you need to do instead, you need to build up the resources inside. And the resources inside that help you to die well are the resources of a mind that has an inner happiness, that has an inner values, a generous person, a kind person. You feel good about yourself because you have lived in the right way. And she did these things as well. So, I'm sure I'm kind of making it one-sided to make a point. She had very many good qualities as well. So she did build up those things. I'm just trying to kind of make a point out of this. And the more you focus purely on the worldly things, the more difficult the dying process is going to be, because you have to let go of it all. And you have no resources to live on or to fall back upon when you are actually dying. And this is the problem. And then you can say that, maybe I have life being a Buddhist monk, I haven't had any children. Yeah. Whoa, that's really bad. You have to have children. And why? Maybe I could have done something good, yeah, by having children and bringing them up in a good way. But I think that is missing the bigger picture here. The bigger picture, if you want to give something to society, yeah, if you want to give something to other people, you have to have some degree of wisdom. If you have no wisdom, you can only give a tiny, tiny bit to other people. But if you have a degree of wisdom, either through your understanding of Buddhist teachings, through your own meditation practice or whatever it is, maybe through your own wisdom, then you can actually give far more. And instead of limiting that giving to your children, you actually give it to everyone. Yeah? And one of the marvelous things that I have personally experienced as a Buddhist monk is the ability to give to my own family, giving to my parents, yeah? And they pretty much became Buddhists, yeah? Giving to my brother who is a regular meditator. Okay, that's about it. I don't think anyone of those are Buddhists, but anyway, that's pretty good already. Giving back to them, and also giving to a large audience of people around the world. So I have the ability to share something more profound, something more beautiful with a large number of people. And this, I think, is far more valuable than giving something just to, say, your children. Say you have 2 children, yeah, and you don't have all that much wisdom. How much exactly can you give those children? So there is, I think it's important to take that bigger picture, yeah, and your children anyway, who are there? They are just 2 beings that come into your life. Why should you prioritize your children, these 2 beings, over other people? Is that really necessary? If I don't have children, well, maybe those people who would have been my children, maybe I will teach them anyway, because maybe there is a natural affinity there. Maybe they will be in the audience, yeah, somehow, because there is a natural affinity of coming together. So I think in sum, you are if you want to deliver wisdom to people, proper understanding, I think the monastic life has more potential than than I would have had if I had lived as an ordinary layperson with children and all of that. Anyway, so that is my answer for you.
Ajahn, thank you so much. I'm very mindful that you may be rushing off to another appointment. Would you be able to take maybe 2 more questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. There's one here from Facebook. Everything, both interior and exterior, are anicca. When I did my MRI and CT scan, I noticed there is no self. And when I fall sick, I'm unable to tell my body not to feel pain. When I suffered a seizure, there was no control of my own body. I realized anatta at that point. Hence, I abandoned my self-identity, doubt, and ritual attachment. Now I'm spending full-time on Dhamma learning, reading the 5 Nikayas, and listening to Dhamma talks from respected monks like yourself, and also meditating every day. In addition to doing lots of dana, chaga, and cultivating sila, walking the Noble Eightfold Path. Is there anything else I need to focus on? Thank you for your wise words and sharing.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, you're right. And about, I should maybe say, because I was talking about developing the quality. And it is true, they are also impermanent. the inner qualities that we develop through the Dhamma especially, they are less impermanent and they are more under our control than the external things. So ultimately, everything is impermanent, but it is certainly better to focus on the inner ones because there's more control over those and we can do more with them. So is there anything more you can do? Two things that we always need to focus on in our life, and that is our sila, yeah. And when I talk about sila, I mean sila in the bigger way, yeah. So basically doing as much good as you can and doing as little bad as you can. And this includes how you think about things. So the more you're able to turn your mind towards thinking, compassion, compassionate thought, having loving kindness, reducing your ill will and anger, yeah, being a even less materialistic person, moving towards, seeing the problems in the world, renouncing that and developing the inequalities instead. The more you can do that, the better it is. So focus a lot on the heart, yeah, the heart qualities. Your ability to be kind, caring internally is actually very, very important. So this is what I would really recommend. And if you want to have success in meditation, this is exactly what you should focus on, because the more pure your mind is, the more pure your heart is, the more successful your meditation is going to be. So please go on meditation retreats every now and again. Yeah, enjoy some time out. There is a beautiful thing in the sutras where the Buddha says to Anathapindika, his number one male supporter who bought the Jetavana monastery for him in Savatthi. And he says to Anathapindika, you too, as a layman who is very generous and supportive of the Sangha, occasionally you leave your ordinary life behind and you should enjoy the bliss of seclusion. The bliss there is the piti, yeah, the piti sukha of seclusion. And that basically means enjoying the samadhi experiences, enjoying the jhanas. So please do that. Make sure that sometimes you take some time out. Yeah, you can meditate a little bit every day if you enjoy that. But sometimes also take a week, yeah, or take a few days at least. Go on a meditation retreat and see if you can take that practice even deeper. And that is often where you understand how pure your mind is or how pure your heart is. If you can take your meditation to a deep level, you know that you have achieved a lot of purity. If your meditation is not so deep, it means that the purity is still not that deep. Yeah? And then you need to look inside of yourself. How can I practice even more? How can I kind of make even more out of this Noble Eightfold Path to purify myself even further? So do these things. And if you enjoy reading the sutras, reading the word of the Buddha, I would recommend that as well. It can be very inspiring. There's so much beautiful and inspirational sutras, poetry, similes, all of these kind of things that you will probably enjoy. And if you find it hard going, you can also listen to talks that explain these things a little bit in more detail. So just keep on with the Dhamma. As long as you keep on with the Dhamma, then you're going to be on the right track and you're going to be heading in the right direction. So good luck, and I'm very glad that you have you are moving that way, because that is a marvelous thing to be able to do.
Thank you, Ajahn. I suppose the next step is to get a haircut at Bodhiana Monastery.
That's right. That's a good step there. Yeah.
Ajahn, I'm going to seek your permission to combine two questions into the last question. Is it okay?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
The first one is there optimism in Buddhism? Next one is, how can we use mindfulness to let go of attachment at the moment of death to help us attain a good rebirth? So the first one is there a role for optimism in Buddhism?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. This is the message of the Buddha is an optimistic message. Yeah. And sometimes people say, oh, the Buddhist teaching is so pessimistic because we focus so much on suffering, on dukkha. But the point isn't really whether the Dhamma is optimistic or pessimistic. What matters is whether it's realistic. That is, of course, the important point. Because if you are optimistic, but you are deluded about it, you're just going to create suffering for yourself. Yeah, in the future, things will not turn out as you think. and then you will be disappointed, and it will be problematic. There's no point in being optimistic in a deluded way. And the same thing about pessimism. You don't want to be pessimistic in a deluded way either. So the point is to be realistic. And once you are realistic, once you see things in accordance with the reality, then you can also see the way out. Yeah, because that comes with that realism. Once you see things in the right way, then you can also make good choices. As I mentioned before, you can actually decide things in the right way. So this is, and then when you make good choices, then the path out of suffering starts to open up, because that is what the Buddhist practice is all about. It is how to move out of suffering and towards greater and greater happiness. And in that sense, Buddhism is very optimistic. It's optimistic in the sense that there is a way to achieve the highest happiness that can be achieved for a human being. Yeah, and if there's anything that is optimistic, then achieving the highest happiness surely must be the highest kind of optimism, yeah, because nothing can be better than the highest happiness, the highest satisfaction, the highest contentment, the highest compassion, the highest love, and all of these kind of. So that is the optimistic way of thinking about the Buddhist teachings. So how, second question is how to use mindfulness at the point of death to kind of make the dying better. The most important thing is to make sure that we develop all of those qualities in this life that will allow us to be mindfulness when we die. Yeah? You cannot really just bring up mindfulness at the point of death, because mindfulness is something that comes through causes and consequences. So the more you develop the right qualities in life, the more ability you will have to be mindful when you die. So make sure that you practice the spiritual path to the best of your ability. The more pure you are inside, the more kindness you have inside, the less defilements that you have inside, the more mindfulness you will have when you die, the more ability you will have then to die in a good way. Yeah? So now is the time to make sure that that happens. Then when you die, it is true, there is an additional possibility of being mindful when you die. And one of the reasons is because when you are about to die, you know that you have to let go. Yeah, if you are wise about things, if you're not too attached to this world, you know that now I have to let go. I hold on to my family, my friends, my belongings, my status, whatever it is, all of that is going to have to go. I just can't hold on to it. And you are, because you are aware of that, especially if you have understanding of the Buddhist teachings, it will help you to let go more as you die. And because you let go as you die, mindfulness will be more powerful, because mindfulness is the opposite of holding on, and you can be more relaxed and you can die in a positive way. So understanding the Dhamma, having more, living better, all of these things will then give rise to mindfulness when you die. And the best way to use that mindfulness is, of course, to do some kind of, simple recollection about how you have lived, yeah, how you have lived your life. Okay, wow, I've kept the 5 precepts, for so many years. I have tried my very best to be kind, even though I have some defilements, and you forgive yourself for your negative things, because we all have some negative aspects that come with our personality, and these are often deeply embedded in us. You forgive yourself for that. And as you remember how the good things that you have done in your life, basically, that will then be the best aid for moving towards stillness and peace and samadhi, and then even insight as you pass away, because your mind will be pure, the mind will have a positive attitude, and these are the foundation stones for calm, for peace, and also for insight on this path. So one of the best things you can do if someone else is dying, is to encourage them and to remind them of their good qualities. Remind them of the things that they have done. Remind them, you have so wonderful, you have kept these 5 precepts for so many years. We all love you for that. We love you for being such a reliable person. Wow, we feel so lucky to have you as a spiritual friend, as a Kalyana Mitra. Wow, thank you for living such a good life. And if you can encourage someone like on the deathbed, you can imagine how happy they will feel. And then when you are about to die, you can encourage yourself in the same way, and you will lift yourself up, and you will be using that mindfulness in a positive way to enhance the dying experience, and hopefully also to give you then a good rebirth, and perhaps even having some good samadhi and insight on your path out of this life. So there you are. That is the answer to that question.
Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you, Ajahn, for the fantastic question and answer session. Can we all say sadhu 3 times? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Shall we
Ajahn,
now?
may we request some blessings as well as a sharing of merits?
Okay. Can do. Let's do that. So let's do the sharing of merits first. Edang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Edang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Edang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. So that is the sharing of merit. And we'll do a last blessing. Nati me saranang anyang Buddho me saranang varang ete nasa chavaje nasoti te hotu sambada nati me saranang anyang Dhammo me saranang varang ete nasa chavaje nasoti te hotu sambada nati me saranang anyang Sangho me saranang varang ete nasa chavaje nasoti te hotu sambada.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ajahn.
Okay. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, Ajahn. May you be well and
Bye-bye.
happy, and may all in Bodhayana
Bye.
be safe and healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
For this one.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Happy New Year. Bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Great.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. You have some announcement this week, Kim.
Okay, thank you all for coming today. So next week, we're going to have Bhante Chakapala from Mangala Vihara to give us a talk on the origins of happiness. The poor guy actually has postponed his talk because of COVID. So do come and support. He's very sweet, and I'm sure it'll be a good talk. So do come and support Bhante. Next one. Oh, Bhante's talk will be at 10:30, same time, okay? No need to come earlier or later, all right? Okay, then before that, okay. Don't miss this one. Peter Mac, we still know, okay? He's a hypnotherapist, so please do come.
There won't be any recording, so this will be the
Yes, he
only
says
talk.
no recording, no YouTube, no Facebook, nothing. So if you don't come, you miss it, all right? So do come. Venerable Chanda is sweet. Look at the smile. Okay, so do come and support her. She's zooming all the way. No, we recorded the Zoom talk all the way from Anukampa in the UK, and it was a fantastic talk, very inspiring. So do come and support us as well. Support Venerable as well. And finally, I'm very proud of this. We have Mr. Conan Cheong from the Asian Civilizations Museum to talk about the history of Buddhist arts in Southeast Asia. So do come and join us as well if you like history. Find out where history of Buddhism how it evolved and how it brought you here today. Okay, so do come and join us on the 31st of January. He'll be here in person because he's a Singaporean. He can come. Okay, so he'll be here in person. Okay, so we also have BF Youth and the Indonesian service continuing. So do check that out if you're interested.
Yeah. On the 16th is Sister Vikim, Impact of Giving.
Speechless. Okay, now we have the poster for the junior youth up here. Junior youth, very inspiring group of people, fantastic leaders, and very, very good, excellent activities. So do get your young people in your home to join them or support them. Anyway, they're asking for they're asking for registration. Okay, they're asking for registration for new new people to join them. Teenagers. Okay, yin yoga. This is every Thursday.
Yes, here
Where?
at
BF
BF
West.
as
Okay,
well
all
as
right,
Zoom.
okay.
If you don't want to come to BF, both
Via
Zoom,
Zoom, okay.
via Zoom and at BF as well.
Next one, I know I can pass to Sister Eiling.
Happy workout, prevent dementia and slow down frailty. So do come and join us. We still have place at the BF Center. We have 20 places, but only 10 people have taken up here. Zoom, we have about 40 people, but it's very hard to conduct over Zoom. So do come here. For those who are seniors, please encourage your mom or whoever to, or auntie or whoever to come, okay? It's a dual task exercise.
Okay, and finally, if anybody has found this beneficial and would like to donate, here's the QR code. Thank you so much. We only run on donations, as you know. We don't sell anything else, okay? So do help if you can. So thank you very much for coming today. This is the end of our Sunday
And
service.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.